I saw a little head.
Flying actually?
So how would you describe what Robert Bush did?
Absolutely disgusting. The man is disgusting. What a despicable human being he really turned out to be. A monster is how I described him. And I actually said that to him at the court. In fact, I screamed at him, to be fair. Yeah, it wasn't pleasant, but anyway. He's a monster. He's a monster. When you can do that to so many families and have that power over the deceased, that's your loved one in there that he's done that to. That is a monster. A proper monster. And as the days followed, you then sort of realise the enormity of it. When it goes from 30 bodies to 32 to 35. It's truly, truly shocking to hear of that. And then my mind went into, are my parents in there? You know, and I consider myself one of the lucky ones, they weren't. But nevertheless, it still leaves me with doubts now as to whether I've actually got my parents' ashes, because there was a substantial amount of ashes in there. 163 lots of ashes were found in there.
So how does that make you feel now about the ashes you've got and the ashes Rose Garden?
I've really got no idea whether the ashes I have are actually my parents. I'm in a situation now where I have got to convince myself that what I have got is my parents. But I'll never be 100% sure now. Never.
So how does that feel?
Shocking. You know, when you lose your parents like that, you know, you absolutely go out of your way to make sure that you do the best that you possibly can for them upon their death. And that's what I felt like I did for my dad. You know, one of the final things my dad said to me was, please do not waste my life savings on a funeral. Find somebody that'll do it at a decent price. And here we are, you know, it's beggars belief. I'd gone past after a few days, the news had broke, and I happened to be driving past. And there was a couple of little floral tributes and a teddy out on the front. And it absolutely broke my heart that was the response. And I was like, no, this is not the response to this. So, you know, I went on good old Facebook and said, look, friends and family, Hesel Roaders, please, can we, between 4 o'clock and 4:30 on Friday, I am going to lay flowers at Legacy. Please come and join me. And that's how it started, really, on that following Friday after the findings. As I worked on the corner with 35 roses. I was completely overwhelmed. The community had come out, they'd laid flowers, the whole front of the building was completely covered. It's been humbling to be part of a community that's come together in such grief and such anger, that we're now all friends together. You know, we meet up regularly, and so there are some lovely friendships come from it, you know, but it should never have. How did he get away with it for so long? He's affected thousands of people in this city. by just not doing the job that he was paid to do.
How have you found it listening to everyone's stories?
Oh, absolutely heartbreaking. Absolutely heartbreaking. You can't, some of the things I've listened to and heard is just beyond your imagination. I mean, they were having to identify the bodies through DNA because the bodies were that decomposed. And, I mean, putrefied. I mean, what? Just violent, it. Oof. But even like for the Ashes families, I've had people ringing me saying, I had a tattoo done for my grandma from her ashes, and it turns out that the ashes that she's now got tattooed are not grandma's. They can't possibly be grandma's. So whose ashes has she got tattooed on herself? And I know of a few of those now, and it's like, how do you come to terms with that? How do you just reconcile that in your own brain? It's so hard. And that, and that's just one example. That's without, finding out that the ashes that you've had on the mantelpiece that you thought were your wife, turns out that your wife actually wasn't cremated till 6 months after you received those ashes. My campaign now really is to get the legislation changed, because we cannot put not one single more family through what we have been through.
Were you shocked when you found out about the lack of regulation in the funeral industry?
Certainly shocked. I think everybody is. We all assume that there's laws to protect the deceased, and there isn't. Not one. So the warning signs were there that there was wrongdoing. Nobody joined the dots.
So do you feel like you've been let down by other people and other bodies apart from just Robert Bush?
Absolutely. Well, look, they've got questions that they need to answer.
So what would you like to see happen now?
I'd like to see full legislation brought in that stops funeral directors being unscrupulous. My dad was a docker, my mum was a cleaner, proper Hessel Roaders, worked hard all their lives. They like to laugh, they like to beer. They went out socialising into like working man's clubs on a weekend, that sort of thing. My dad was my hero. And I think sorry. My mum was the matriarch of the family. She was the boss, really. 2 older sisters. My middle sister Angela, she died in the year 2000. So they knew a lot of sadness. They had a lot of sadness in their lives. But they also had lots of joy. They loved going on holiday. They loved being home. Lost my dad to cancer. And my mum to Alzheimer's. So, yeah. So when the last thing you can do for them is sort out the funeral, and then you find out this, it's really not great. Yeah.